Hey everyone, it's Robin from Rose and Lily. In this video, we're going to be looking at different types of yarn for amigurumi, and I'll be going through the pros and cons of each type. At the end, I'll give a summary of different types of yarn that I think work best for different types of projects. The yarns we'll be looking at are cotton, acrylic, cotton acrylic blends, bamboo, plush polyester yarn, and lastly we'll look at natural fibres. This includes things like wool, alpaca and merino. First up, we're going to be looking at cotton. Now cotton is very popular for a variety of reasons. It is often used for baby items because it doesn't lose fibres like other types of yarn. You also get two main types of cotton yarn, and that is mercerized versus unmercerized. Mercerized cotton is slightly more durable and has a glossier finish. So here is an example of plain unmercerized cotton, and it has a matte finish. Whereas a mercerized cotton looks more like this, and it has a glossier finish. What's great about cotton yarn is that it has minimal pilling or fuzziness after a lot of use. Some other types of yarn, such as acrylic, tend to pill over time. Because the fibers are smooth, it has a great stitch definition. Cotton yarn is fairly durable and easy to clean. The toys made using cotton yarn tend to hold their shape well over time. Another plus is that you can find yarn made from organic cotton, which means it was grown without any chemicals. The main disadvantage I find with using cotton is that you can often only get it up to a medium weight. This means if you would like to make a large toy, it would take quite a long time and quite a lot of yarn. Cotton yarn also has no stretch when working with it, so it may be a little bit more difficult for beginners. Next up, we're going to look at acrylic. Acrylic is one of the most popular yarns for amigurumi. It's fantastic for starting out or as a beginner because it has a slight stretch when working with it. Here are just 3 examples I have of acrylic yarn, and they all have different textures and different thicknesses. I always suggest feeling the acrylic yarn before buying it because some of it can be a bit scratchy. One of the best things about acrylic yarn is that it's very affordable and you can find it pretty much anywhere. It's also really easy to clean, you can just throw it in the washing machine. Like cotton, it holds its shape really well over time, and the thickness goes all the way up to bulky or super bulky, which means you can make bigger projects quicker. I find acrylic easier to work with than cotton because it has a slight stretch to it. For this reason, I always recommend it for beginners. Unfortunately, some acrylic yarns can be scratchy, so it's always good to feel them in person before buying. And it does tend to pill over time, unlike cotton yarn. Lastly, it is obviously synthetic. So here is a project I made using cotton and acrylic yarn. The hat is made out of cotton, as well as the ears, muzzle, blanket and scarf. As you can see, the cotton has really great stitch definition. The body is made out of the acrylic, and it has a slightly fuzzier texture, so you can't see the outline of the stitches as clearly. Next up is cotton acrylic blends. Now these blends come in different ratios, so some might be 50-50 cotton acrylic, and some might be 60-40 and so forth. These yarns can be described as the middle ground between cotton yarns and acrylic yarns. This means they have a slight stretch from the acrylic, but less pilling and fuzziness because of the cotton. Next up, we have bamboo or bamboo blends. Bamboo yarn can be incredibly soft and it's also durable. It's naturally hypoallergenic and antibacterial, so it's fantastic for people with allergies. The best part about bamboo yarn is that it can be very, very glossy. So this is a bamboo cotton blend, and you can see how shiny it is. It's really smooth and soft, and it reflects the light beautifully. Now, the main difficulty with bamboo yarn is that it can lose shape from washing. So you need to wash it carefully according to the yarn label. It's also quite slippery, and because of this it can split when working with it, so it might not be the best choice for beginners. Now we have my absolute favorite kinds of yarn, which are plush, velvet or chenille. These are all made from polyester. As you may know, I make most of my projects out of this kind of yarn. So here's the Bernat velvet yarn, which is a bit more glossy. And here is the baby snuggle yarn by Hobie, which is a bit more matte. I have done an entire video on plush yarns, and I'll link that at the top. So check that out if you're interested. The main reason I love working with this yarn is that it comes in very thick weights, so you can make big projects very quickly. It's also really soft and cuddly. The stitches in this yarn can be very hard to see, so I wouldn't recommend it for absolute beginners. It also tends to catch when you're trying to unravel or undo stitches, so you can't unravel and rework the yarn too many times. And of course, being a polyester yarn, it is synthetic. Lastly, we have our other natural fibers like wool, alpaca and merino. Depending on the type of yarn you get, it can be very soft and have lots of different textures. So this is wool, and it's quite matte and very thick and soft. Now with natural fibers, there will be limits to washing depending on the type of yarn, so always read the label instructions. It also might not be suitable for people with allergies. Now these types of yarn might go out of shape after a lot of use and washing. So for these reasons, I generally don't make amigurumi using these natural fibers. However, if you're making a piece that's going to be ornamental and won't need to really be washed, then these types of yarn should work just fine. So I've made a summary on what I think the best types of yarn are for different uses. Obviously, this is just my personal preference, so don't be afraid to play around with different yarns and textures for different projects. For baby items, I would have to say the best to use is cotton. This is because it doesn't tend to lose fibers when they mouth the items. If you would like to do a project that works up quickly, the best to use would be plush yarn. And obviously, the thicker the yarn, the bigger the project will end up being. If you would like the project to last a long time and be very durable, I would suggest cotton or even a cotton acrylic blend. As I said before, the cotton doesn't pill as much as an acrylic. As far as affordability goes, acrylic is generally the most cost-effective option. I often use acrylic to test my patterns because it is cheaper than the other yarns. If you're after a project that is super soft and cuddly, then plush yarn would be the way to go. And lastly, if you're just starting out, I would suggest to use acrylic. It's easy to work with and affordable. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe and hit that notification bell. And don't forget to check out my website for all my patterns.